and welcome back to Small Caps. My name is Jess Furtick, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with the very newly appointed CEO of P2P Group, Mr. Ed Clarke. The company is actually dual listed in Frankfurt and also on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the ticker code PPB. Hi, Ed. It's a pleasure to have you on the show with us.
Hey, great to meet you, Jess.
Now, Ed, before we get started and delve into some of the sort of deeper questions, could you just provide our Small Caps audience with a brief overview of the company and also maybe a little bit about your background and maybe a bit of your previous work with the company?
Yeah, so P2P Group listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange. We also have a dual listing in Germany. So the company's been focused in healthcare, obviously a very relevant sector at the moment. And I actually became involved about 6 months ago when I introduced them to a product that I've been working on with some very accomplished people, which hopefully we have time to discuss. So my background is in technology. I've built 4 technology companies, all still operating. Some have reached ASX all tech index size from start. And I've been in deep technology products. So I've done communications platforms, logistics technology, aged care technology. And I guess this technology is basically everything I learned in those sectors about all the gaps, and something which I actually took some time out last year to spend time with my daughter and discovered this technology and became obsessed. And I think this is the next sort of billion-dollar opportunity for me. And so I was really excited to get involved with it and get in and start building.
That's amazing. Thank you, Ed. So can you tell us a little bit more about this technology? What are the applications of this technology?
Yeah, so why I was most excited about this is I've worked with IoT, and I think people are familiar with that concept of building hardware devices that are attached to the internet that you can pull data from, and usually they're specialized. So for example, in the aged care sector, you've got full sensors, you've got sensors to say someone gets out of bed. A classic example is the Apple AirTag, which is a device that helps track and locate you. There's devices for all sorts of things. And what we do is essentially, instead of needing the piece of hardware at the end, we actually use the Wi-Fi router's signal. So it's a brand new technology concept where the radio frequency from a standard Wi-Fi router, actually you can record the fingerprint of its interaction with the physical environment. So if you walk around a room, you're interrupting the signal. And there's a standard piece of software on a Wi-Fi router called channel state information. And essentially what we've been able to do is use that to capture what's happening in a room. So for example, if you walk through a room, it can actually map where you move by using an AI neural network to follow your interruption of the signal. So it's very cheap. You imagine every Wi-Fi router in the world now becomes monetizable. I actually just did a demo, a roadshow, and I was having people stand up in the room 2-3 meters away from the router, and I could give them their heart rate, their breathing, and their exact distance in centimeters from where I was. So it's so accurate. It can do things like heart rate and breathing, but it also, the full range of the radio signal means that you can actually use it to see, for example, has someone fallen over? Has someone got out of bed? Has someone opened the kitchen door? So it changes in the aged care setting, the cost to deploy a smart house from say $5,000 or $10,000 to maybe $100, but you can get more information. Industrial settings where you've got unions and privacy issues, you can use this to look at safety zones and congestion. Unions won't let you tag people or put cameras on workers, for example. So it gets through those confidentiality pieces because it's less interested in specific people. And you can imagine in retail intelligence where people are moving in stores and things like that. So it's almost unlimited use cases and super cheap to deploy. And in fact, the military is an area which has come up really fast. So being able to see through walls, obviously Wi-Fi signal goes through walls in your house. It helps with policing and military to do safe entrances because they can see what's happening on the other side. So huge scale of potential, but we're starting in the aged care space because it's the most desperate for affordable monitoring.
So interesting, Ed. Now, given, the wide array of applications of your platform, I can imagine there's quite high market demand, or there would be. And so how have you identified and tapped into that market demand?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a saying if you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one, right? You need to have a clear message to explain what you do. And as I mentioned, when we did our research, aged care is the most desperate place for technology. They've been really trying hard with IoT. So, for example, people have built radar devices that you put in a room, very expensive. They've built hardware. You may have seen people with the necklaces around their neck for falls. But a lot of these things, yes, people forget to wear their necklaces or can't afford the radar. And so they are, unfortunately, not a full solution. Whereas this can solve a lot of the problems cheaply, and we can actually help people in developing markets and developed markets deliver this. And we can go out to the tech providers straight away that are already working with the end customer. So we don't need to go direct to the end customer. We're going to the B2B model, and they can build and deploy essentially for free on our platform.
That's unreal. So now, Ed, given the significant sort of market potential that you've just mentioned, what are the company's strategies for scaling your operations, firstly, but also ensuring sustainable growth?
Yeah, so for us, it's about, as I said, that if you're not marketing to anyone, if you're marketing to everyone, you're not marketing to anyone, right? So we have to get the unit economics right of acquiring our customers. And so that means going vertical by vertical. And so we'll do our market research, and there's a lot of intelligence out there on who's looking for these types of solutions by their Google search activity, by their articles, by surveys, from market research. So we're targeting the areas that are already looking for these types of solutions. Whether they know that something like ours exists or not, doesn't matter. We can educate them, but we're making sure we go to the sectors that are looking. So, for example, aged care, home security could be the next one, then industrial and manufacturing. They're definitely looking for spatial intelligence, military. So we'll go one by one through the verticals and get our go-to-market strategy right in each.
Yeah, I'm really interested to learn more about that, Ed. So you've started out with the vertical of healthcare. What were the unique advantages of starting with healthcare before expanding into other verticals?
Yeah, so today, if you look at the Australian market today, there are devices out there, but they're all hardware based. And so if you want to build a smart home for aged care, you may have to go to 3, 4, 5 different companies to get different hardware devices. Then you have to integrate them all into your platform, and then you have to coordinate the data to get a picture of what's happening. And then you have 5 different cybersecurity threats running into your network, which you have to monitor. So it is very complex for the provider at the moment. And that's in the context of the government legislation saying that it's no longer okay to just have someone drop by the house 2 or 3 times a week, poke their head in. Even on my last few weeks, I've had people tell me about their mother falling over at home and someone not finding them for 2 or 3 days, and they're lying on the floor just waiting for the next person to drop in. So all these things are avoidable. And if you look at the cost of something like this, which essentially can come down to dollars a month, makes it super exciting that we can actually solve a big problem that the government's saying we need to solve, consumers are saying we need to solve, and we've got a massive aging population. So
Wow. Okay. So it's really out of necessity that this demand is coming from. So then in terms of expansion into other verticals, what are your plans? What is the next vertical that you're looking at? What else are you focusing on right now and into the future?
So what I'm most excited about with what we're doing, and I guess I mentioned before, I see this as the next big thing, and probably what drove me to go back full time into a technology company, which I wasn't necessarily looking to do. But what we're doing is I guess people understand the concept of Amazon Web Services, where it's not a finished product. What it is a bunch of infrastructure that you can pull down into your software, and it does your cloud hosting, it manages your CPUs and your data storage. So we're going to deliver our product in that way, as I mentioned. So we go to the platforms already supporting the market. So we're going to deliver our infrastructure that means that it's low code machine learning and training. So if you want to, for example, train our system and the Wi-Fi signal to learn the amount of moisture in soil, or to learn about plant growth or incidents in industrial areas. It's very easy for you to train it. So we don't necessarily have to train every use case. We'll make it very easy for our customers to do that. So, for example, a first or second year engineer and a bunch of example data points, and you can train it for almost any use case in any industry. So it can go as fast as the industry wants to take it, and our job is going to be to educate the different verticals.
So, Ed, you mentioned defense. How would it be applied in defense? I'm very interested to understand that.
Yeah, so I'll give you the example of hostage hold-up situations. So you've got someone or people inside a house with hostages. And traditionally what happens is you have people, obviously a team outside that are monitoring and trying to figure out how to enter, where to enter. They blast through. What this does is you can actually, through using a drone or placing a tiny device, it's very, very small. Actually, this is a sample device here. It's you can get a system that like fits in the size of a matchbox car that can then look inside the house and see where people are moving. So the signal goes through the wall, and then you can then see where there's movement inside the house and map out, okay, there's no people near this wall, we can come through this door, or there's no people through the other side of the house, so we can come through there. So it creates a really safe environment for people to enter and resolve these hostage situations and rescue situations, whether it be in police or military situation. Obviously, these are two industries that are really looking for health and safety of their officers as the first point of call. Another example, there's two other examples that we've had people come to us and say these are things we're looking at. So when they actually do these entries, they blow down the door. But one of the problems they have is that if the building is not structurally safe, it can actually bring down the house on people entering. So you can actually use this Wi-Fi signal to look for cracks in the wall and damage to the walls, because it will see the difference between, say, concrete and the cracks in concrete. It's just a difference in physical context. So you can train for that. Landmines in the ground, you can train for that. So it's got a whole heap of applications that with very cheap hardware, you can actually deploy at scale.
Wow, my brain is just going all over the place on the applications and how much good this could be used for. We could probably speak for hours on this topic. But Ed, I just wanted to understand, so in terms of your revenue streams, what are the company's current revenue streams?
So the company is going to hit the market in the next couple of months. So we've already got commercial programs running, hopefully to complete in the military space and in the aged care space. We have a wait list. We've got people joining to get access to the technology. So what we'll do is obviously we'll give anyone access to up to 3 to 5 devices for free for training, so they can test and train with their hardware for free and build proof of concepts and products. Once they commercialize, we'll monetize. So we'll charge $10, $20 per month per endpoint. When you look in the aged care use case, there's hundreds of companies managing 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 customers. So there's a huge market opportunity there for this to get out. And it means that there's no delay in market entry waiting for hardware and complex installations of specialist devices. So we'll start there, and then obviously all of the other industries can come and build products and monetize, which we then monetize as well.
Okay, interesting. So Ed, just to clarify, so it's like a subscription-based model to begin with?
Exactly, usage-based. So the more endpoints being a standard Wi-Fi router that you use, the more that we charge per each of those devices. So
okay, great. And so have you had any challenges in terms of monetizing the platform? And if so, how have you addressed those challenges?
No, so I think the advantage that we have is that usually with the adoption of technology like this, the initial investment is the barrier, because people will be reluctant to invest heavily in hardware in the hope that the information that comes from them gives them return on investment. So we don't have that initial investment in hardware, meaning that, as I mentioned, we can give it to you for free, so you can test your ROI theory in advance before you spend any money. And then you can deploy once you've proven the concept. So it shortens the sales cycle and removes that common barrier of having to buy something first before you actually start testing.
That's really interesting. And that also kind of shows or demonstrates the company's confidence in the efficacy of the product and its ability to do what it says it's going to do.
Exactly. So it's not a PowerPoint-based sales process. It's a build and test and then validate-based sales process, which we don't have to support because, like AWS, people understand how to pull the technology down, use it, and then if it works, then they expand it into commercial products.
Yeah, so interesting. The company's made a couple of really interesting board and also advisory board or advisor appointments. Can you explain to us how those appointments are going to help in terms of the strategic direction of the company?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing I ever do in a company is find the best people I can to obviously help run it. So that starts with the CTO. So Sudhakar Novella, he built a platform called Turbo, which he was one of the first few engineers, if not the first, and built that to a 200 million US revenue platform out of Silicon Valley. Got raving reviews from people like Reid Hoffman. Then on the advisory side, so we've got a gentleman named Tobias Briggs, who was COO of Whisper during their IPO, and that became a very large ASX listed company. He was also the head of IBM AI, so he's got a lot of experience in that space. We also have a gentleman named Dr. Mohammed Shahzad, who's probably the number one academic in the world in this signal image processing. So he's got a lab in North Carolina where they're doing a lot of research in this space, and he's the most cited person I could find as well. So the industry, the academia is looking at him for his examples and his references in this technology. And then a gentleman who joined recently, Alex Macropoulos, his background is 22 years in military special forces. So when we started to get demand from the military, we thought we better get someone in to help us understand that space as well. So he's joined and he's helping us navigate that space, which is an eye-opener for me, but very interesting and potentially very lucrative. So
yeah, excellent, Ed. It sounds like quite a well-rounded management team that you've managed to put together. But I'm quite interested to learn a little bit more about your tech team in particular as well. What are the what's the expertise or the strengths of your technology team, obviously developing the R&D?
yeah, so I mentioned Sudhakar. He's probably built 5 massively scaled platforms in his career. So he's got a lot of experience. I mean, there's I guess 2 sides of what we're doing. So there's the science of the signal image processing, and then there's the commercialization, which is scaling the software platform for others to access. And so we've got a really solid team around that scaling of the platform. But also Sudhakar holds 10 patents himself that he's built through his career. I'm sure we're going to add a couple around what we're doing with this technology. So there's some interesting IP that we own here. But yeah, we're essentially putting a team together which has got strong experience in machine learning, in signal processing, and also in the scaling and commercialization piece. So we're quite confident. Obviously, there's execution risk with technology, but we're quite confident we've covered off those aspects with the scientific and academic support we can get from Dr. Mohammed Shahzad, and then what Sudhakar's done in the past and his team. So covering off all of those bases so we can get to market quickly and surely.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Ed. Now, talking about covering off bases, let's talk a little bit about the market cap of the company. So that's sitting at around 6 million Canadian dollars. What factors do you think are driving the current valuation of the company at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think it's to be honest, it's a really interesting point for people that want to invest now because typically in Silicon Valley or in the private space with a team like this, your valuation would be much higher. But my experience is public markets. We've got a good public markets team, and I think this is a picture that we can take globally. Obviously, I've just got back from Europe where there's strong interest, so it's a really exciting entry point for people. And I think that what's really happened is we haven't even marketed the product until probably 2 or 3 weeks ago in the investor space. So we're just starting to come out and explain what we're doing, and as we've got our technology ready, and we can demo it and we can work with people. So it's very new in terms of messaging. So it's basically ground zero for people understanding what we're doing. And yeah, there's a really good response so far, as we can see in the last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, once people can understand what we're doing and see it working.
Yeah, so interesting. And I suppose other than the sort of educational component to the investor market, it's about building up that customer base and those testimonials as well, which will help hopefully
Exactly right.
the share price and the valuation.
For sure.
Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely.
Now, I just have one final question for you, which is what we ask all of our companies that come on Small Caps, which is just to provide us with 2 or 3, key investment highlights as to why investors should have PPB on their stock watch list.
Yeah, so the first is that you've got almost an infinitely scalable product that doesn't need any hardware, and what it needs to deliver is in everyone's home. So I imagine everyone that watches this has a Wi-Fi router, which means they're a potential customer, as opposed to other hardware businesses where you have to convince someone to buy something. So I think that's the first piece. The second piece is that there is just huge market demand for spatial intelligence as a broad umbrella for aged care. For example, home security is another huge area. So all of these areas, there's really strong market demand for safety, security, efficiency. And this is really a breakthrough way of providing that, as opposed to the legacy ways of doing it. I imagine you've been in buildings before where you have to like wave your arm to turn a light on and it comes off. This can do those types of things without those silly bad user experience models. And finally, as I mentioned, and you mentioned yourself, the market cap is extremely low for the team that's been put together and the stage of the company with the technology now working. So anyone, I guess, that's watching this in the short term is going to get a really exciting entry point to get their first few shares. So I think it's a great point in time.
Fantastic, Ed. Thank you so much. It was a great interview. Really enjoyed our chat and learning more about the company. And best of luck, and hope to have you back on the show again soon, Ed.
Thanks for having me.